back to the motor now, and we've got a plate to put on which fits here, which is this thing here. And I'm thinking the best way to do this is to get the surface on the main motor damp with glue, and then push it into place. There we go, so that's in. Yep, that was definitely the best strategy. And then this goes in that way around into two little pegs there, but it's a little narrow, so I just want to widen it up a little bit. I think for that we need the emery board, because that's thin enough to get in. And we're just going to take a little bit of material out. Right, let's test fit that and see how that goes together now. Still not amazing. I'm gonna take a bit more off. I'm trying to square it off at the same time. There we go, that's square. And we'll just make sure that that's never coming off again. Right, that completes step 21. So step 22, and we've got all of these parts to attach. So that mounts into there. Right, let's have a look at this. So we're mounting this plate onto that top hole that you can see there. So let's just see what that looks like. If I can drop it into place, we'll just glue it in. There, pins in the hole. That position looks right. Pin is in the hole again, so let's glue that in. Okay, and then we've got this piece that's gonna just stick out of there, like so. Oh, have I put that on wrong? Right. Yeah, I think I've put that on wrong. That's why it didn't look right. So if that's facing me, it's going that way. Well, that's easier to put on, isn't it? Still enough glue on there for that to hold, I think. And then that goes on like so. There we go, like that. And then that goes on there. Blimey. And then this connects to that. Where do they expect you to hold it? It's bonkers. Right, there we go. So this goes on there like that. It's just balanced on at one point. Then there's a hose that will add a little bit of rigidity. So if we put that into place, oh, I see. There's a little cut out in the back of the part. Right, okay, I think that's roughly in position, so we'll get some glue on it. It needs to be straightened up at the front. Put some glue on it at the front. Right, it's just bonkers, this. It is so fiddly and fragile. So I've got to put that piece on, a piece that's balanced on two tiny little pegs. Right, so we have this pipe which fits into that hole underneath there, only it doesn't really, so we'll sort the pin out. There we go, a bit shorter, does the trick. And I need to see, it just touches that then, it doesn't, is that right? Oh no, no, it's connecting onto there like that and going into there. Right, I need different tweezers. Right, let's see how we get on with this one. Hope you're enjoying this, because I'm enjoying the build, but it's incredibly fiddly. Well, that doesn't reach, does it? It's on its mount correctly. And it's straight. So I don't quite understand why that's not making contact. We'll leave it for now. We will have to come back to it though. Right, let's test fit that. Yeah, that's okay. Right, that's come loose, so I need to glue that back in. Getting a crick in my neck now. I mean, they just want this to hang off. There's a strap, a photo etch strap, that you've got to glue on. So the exhaust, if you have it that way, that's not strong enough for that yet. I think that's as far as we can go until the glue dries on that. I'll come back to you in your time. Right now, in my time, probably leave it an hour. Right, with our khaki base coat down, we can now start thinking about shading that, and we're going to go dark first. That's generally how I do it. I go dark first because doing the light highlights, you can tidy things up a little bit. So I mean, naturally you try and do light colours first, but that's not always the way. So I know this is a bit counterintuitive, but I promise you it works better, because generally when you're using the lighter colours, the paint is going to be a little bit thicker, your colour saturation is going to be greater, so you can tidy up and cover up darker stuff quite easily. Right, so we're going to start with our khaki. Now you really want to have left your base coat to have dried at least overnight. I mean, it just happens to have been over a week since I was last doing anything on these figures. So that's our base coat down. And just going to rinse my brush. I can rinse my brush in the water that we're using for mixing because everything's going on this khaki brown anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I've got a selection of colours here that I'm going to be using for darkening and lightening. So I've got a deep brown, a tan earth, and a leather brown, all of which sort of complement but also darken. Probably not going to use the deep brown unless I feel I need to lighten something a little bit. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to add the tan earth first and do do a bit of darkening, and then add a little bit of the leather brown when we feel we need to. So we'll build up the layers. We'll do the really deep dark stuff in the bottom first, and then we'll build up the layers, which will make the dark darker, and we'll also expand the shading as we go. Bearing in mind that we've got the sun on the front here, so we'll be generally a bit darker on the back anyway. So I'm going to start with a bit of this tan earth, and then we're going to add a bit of the dark brown to it. So I'll put some of that dark brown there. I know it's contaminating the paints, but it doesn't really matter because we're only doing dark mixing here anyway. Right, that is not looking bad, so we can now darken this mixture, which is the one we're likely to use first. Okay, right, we're going to use that one first. We might add a little bit more of the khaki to that just to lighten it actually when we come to use it, but we'll start with that one. So this can be quite a time consuming job because there's a lot of folds and creases and things that we need to pick out. And we have to do things like underneath the collars where there'd naturally be shadow anyway. And where the pockets are, and creases and hems as well. I'll just change my brush actually. Now at this stage it doesn't matter if we lay too much dark down because we'll sort it out as we do the other layers of paint. So it's really important that we capture all of the deep folds and creases, even if we end up undoing them later on. So just doing around the where the tunic meets the garment underneath, and we can do the sides of the strap in there, which would create shadow. Then right down at the bottom of all of those creases. Don't worry about depth of shadow at this stage, we'll do that later on, but anything that's a deep crease we want to be right on the bottom of. There we go. That's starting to shape up nicely. Then on the trousers we've got the join in the leg is actually a seam anyway, so we can highlight that. And we've got the pocket there, and you can see that's adding definition that we actually couldn't see before. There we go, and we will do underneath the trousers, because that's still trouser colour. And then we've got this quite heavy crease here in the trousers. Start heading around the side now, because we've pretty much done all of the front. And whilst we're on the side, we're looking not just at what we're doing with the trousers, and go underneath there, but we can go back all the way up the body. Then where the tunic sort of oozes over the top of the belt there, that's a good place to put some dark in. Around the backpack, where you've naturally got shadow being created. And then we've got the continuation of the collar. Now where the moulding's not so good, we can bring it out by putting our dark highlighting in. So now we've moved round to the back. And we've got, again, underneath the collar, keep nudging his foot. And then we've got underneath the backpack, there's a lot of creases around the back of the tunic there, where it's getting gathered up by the backpack. Underneath of the belt, of course. And then, because we're on the back and we want it a bit darker, we can be a bit more liberal with our dark colour here and put a little bit more down, but we'll really bring that to life on the next bit. But we can put some of the lighter creases, we can darken those, whereas we've not done that so much on the front, and that's how we're going to differentiate where the sunlight is. So the area of the dark on the back is sort of broader. So rather than just picking out the bottom of the crease, we're doing a wider area of it. Not all of it. We still want to be able to show light and dark in that process. But we'll do the same with the lighter shades of dark colours. We'll just expand those areas a bit as well. but already you can see what a difference it's making, bringing out the creases. Okay, so I can't remember if we did this leg, but it doesn't look like we did. So we're now on this, yeah, we're now on this last side. So trying to work systematically so we don't miss anything. Okay, that is our first figure done in terms of darkening the shadow. So if we get one of the other figures, you can see the difference, how that contrasts to just having painted that. So although it's a bit time consuming, it's making a huge difference ultimately to what these figures are going to look like. So I've got another 4 to do. I'm going to do that off camera because there's only so much of this you can watch, and I'll be back to you when we're doing the next step. Okay, so our very dark highlighting in the centre of all the creases is now dried, and I'm moving on to a lighter colour. And now we're going to do it more broadly. So where we were just doing the centre of the creases before, now we're going to really get in and highlight all of those creases and widen the area of darkness, and that will also further darken what we've put down, so it should look okay. So what we're going to do, so we start under the pocket here where you can see there is like a little dark triangle. Now we can sort of go over that and join it up with the one below and go right up the sides there. And expand it out. Here at the bottom we can do the same. So we're doing the full sort of width of the creases rather than just the centre. And there's also some creases that we didn't put in that we can now accentuate. And when you first put it down and it's wet, it looks like you're covering everything up and you're sort of having to start again, but it's not the case. When it dries, it will look great. Or at least I'm hoping it will, but yeah, it should do. It allows you to now put the shape into the creases a little bit. And then when we do the highlighting next with the paler colours, that'll just further define those shapes. We can already see some of those coming out on the trouser there. Now the other thing I should say is this time the paint is a fair bit thinner. It's not quite a wash, but it's much more reminiscent of a wash than a paint this time. It's definitely thinner. So here on the jacket we can do the full inside of the jacket now, whereas we just did the very bottom before. We can extend out the darkness from the collar. And these creases down here. I'm not doing things like the top of the pocket or anything like that because that's going to get lightened ultimately. We can do the gap between the pocket and the seam there, which will be slightly darker. And because the paint's thinner and much more wash-like, you can more liberally go over areas that you feel need it. So if we move to the arm now here, where there's lots of creases, we can just paint the full width of that crease, whereas we just went in the bottom before. We're now getting that full width, which will help us understand the shape visually when we look at it. And you can really start to see the garment come into life. Nice broad sweeps, and then here we can put the shape in. So you can also use this process now to sort of tint down and slightly darken areas generally. So where we've got under this arm, we can just go over the whole area because that's going to imply some shadow. And then as we get further away from the arm, we can go back to just doing the inside of the creases, and then we can expand the area of darkness away from the backpack as well. Okay, so the dark shading is now done. So what we want to do now is restore the original colour in the places where we've not got shadow. So we're going back to the original British khaki colour without any other mix in it, and we're going to do all the raised areas, and then we will follow that with lightening that and doing the very tops of the raised areas to highlight things. So this is where we now start seeing all that work sort of coming together, and it gives us an opportunity to start tidying things up a little bit and deciding how deep we want the shadows to be. So I'm going to start here on the pocket there, and you can see how that is really bringing that to life now. And we're not done yet. So where we've got detail that's not very sharp in the moulding process, we can use this process of rebalancing to just highlight areas that we want to pick out more than the soft mould might have done. So this is a perfect time to get your shapes the way you want them and so on. Okay, you get the idea. So I'm going to carry on doing that and I'll come back to you for the final stage. We are on the last stage of the painting of the uniforms, and what we've done is we've added some green brown, which is like a paler brown colour, into the British khaki to lighten it. And then this stage, it's not dissimilar to dry brushing. We're putting a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush, then wiping it off like you would do with dry brushing, and then we're just picking out the very, very tops of the detail just to accentuate the shape. You don't have to go all the way along the crease. You can just do the ends where it's most creased, and then when you've got small areas like this, you can just run the brush over it like exactly dry brushing it, to pick out little tiny details. It's a good way, but try and paint in where you can, because you have got more control. Dry brushing way of doing it's okay, but you're likely to end up highlighting areas that perhaps you didn't want to, and what have you, whereas you'll have a more natural controlled look if you do it with your paintbrush. Also, what you're going to put down will be thinner, so you can see how that's sort of bringing him to life. And if you think about where we were right at the start of this process, and you just had that block of colour, we've travelled a long way with some really quite simple steps. Now obviously when you put it on wet, it's a bit lighter. It will become a little bit more subtle as it dries, so don't worry. And if you don't like it, you just paint over the whole thing again with the base colour and start again. No, nothing lost. So quite a therapeutic thing to be doing on a Sunday morning, I have to be honest. So on the arms here, you can see I've already done it, and it's really brought those creases out. And a little high points, we can put a little bit more on. And we'll just keep on working through until we're happy. And again, working methodically is your best way here. Make sure that you're not missing anything by doing it a section at a time. Complete the section before you move on. So there you go. You now know how I go about painting figures, and like I say, I'm not the best in the world at it, but I understand the principle, and the more you do it, the better you get. And last time I got someone else to do my figures, and I sort of regret it now, because the more every opportunity to practice I should take. So I'm going to carry on with the uniforms, and then we will come back to the figures when we're doing some other elements. of this. So we've still got quite a bit to do one way or another. Building up this engine is proving very tricky. You sort of have to manhandle everything into place. I've just been working on this little connection here, putting that onto there, which also meets onto there, and that makes the whole thing rigid. But getting it there, gosh, because you're attaching that onto just that one area, and it's a lot of weight for that one little connection point, and trying to keep it straight is near impossible. So I'm just doing one connection at a time. I've got it in. It's taken me 10 minutes to get this into place, and I don't want to take my finger off it and have it pop out, so I'm gonna glue it in while I'm holding it. But yeah, it is very, very fiddly. I'm still not convinced I've got it perfectly in place. There we go. That feels a bit better. And then we've got to line this pipe up with that opening. So we have to manhandle that together. There we go. So let's glue that in. There we go. And just hold that there for a sec. It is very fiddly. It's going to look awesome when it's done. Just going to put a bit more glue on. There we go. Just see if we can clean this little clamp up as well. Yeah. One fits, the other one doesn't. That's now come out. It's not happy. I need to glue that back in at the back. That's an important mount, and I don't want. We're going to put the mud guard on there eventually. Yeah. The fit is very challenging. It's a very complicated little build, and everything seems to push. You know, you put one thing in, it pushes the other thing out of a line. See, that fitted lovely before, and now it's nowhere near. Alright, I'm going to come back to you when I've sorted it. Well, I've got it together. I'm not convinced of its robustness, but it is all sort of there. Looks a bit crooked in places as well, but as we're doing it wrecked, that's okay. But yeah, I have struggled to connect all these parts up. Anyway, she's together, so we'll just leave it all to set and dry now, I think, and then we can paint it before we attach it to the main body. Right then, before we put a lid on this, I need to sort out the inside, because the intention is to have at least one, possibly both, of the rear doors open. So the inside of this is going to have all sorts of things going in it. It's going to get scratched and scuffed, and possibly some of the colours off boxes and things that have been put in there could end up being leaving marks on there. So we can go with a sort of a range of colours. Most of these colours are around chipping and chipping of wood, but I've got like a yellow in there and a white in there, which could easily come from cartons or things like that. So as always, less is more, but in this instance we're going to have a little bit of fun with it, because when we put the lid on it, it's going to darken up a little bit. So it might need to be a little bit more overt to actually be visible at all when it's done. So let's have a little bit of fun with that. So we're going to use the pencils dry, which is my preference, because once you wet them, it's a lot. You get like a flow of paint, and I don't really want that. So I'm not going to start with any particular colour. I've got some rusty ones. We'll do those last because we can do some of the tops and scuffs on there and what have you. So we can also do the doors at the same time, and that might be a nice place to start. We're not likely to see box scuffs and things like that on there. So we've got these little raised lumps on the inside where the wheel arches are. So that's a good place for a few scuffs. And I'm going to try and do them in the direction that you might get as they were put in there or something like that. There we go. So put that pencil to one side. This is like chipping for wood. We've got this wood bar across the back here. So I think just going up and down on there will get me the edges, and then we'll just speckle it like chips. We can do some scratches, you know, just have a bit of fun with it really. Try not to do too much at the edges, because that's least likely to get scratched. It's the bits in the middle. Okay, that's the wood done for now, I think. I don't know what the material is of this, but I do think it's metal, having looked at pictures. So more scratches and scrapes from other materials. Of course, there could be wood crates put in there, and they might give you scratches as well. Right, chipping colour, that's always good on pretty much anything. Because we've got a dark grey, it's not going to be too visible. And be mindful of knowing which way is up and which way is down, because you want more chipping at the bottom than the top. That way. On everything we do, we're going to put a little bit on these arches, and they should end up being the most scuffed bit, which I think will look right. Okay, streaking dirt, I've put that in because it's sort of a variation of colour. Dirty white, again, more sort of carton colour, especially with this being medical. I've got some variations of grey just to give you that idea of scuffs in the paintwork really. Oh, careful, we didn't do any on there. That's quite, this is one of the most contrasting colours, so helpful to use this one. And then we can use this darker one. Bit more scuffing around the door area. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep going. I've got another 2 colours to do, so I'm going to keep going, and when I think I'm happy I'll take you through the next step. Okay, so I have finished my chipping process. So it's suitably scratched and scuffed. I don't think it looks overly done, but we're going to do another layer of weathering now that's just gonna sort of add a little bit of balance. So I've got the same mix that we used in the cabin for that sort of mucky look, and I just want to get a little bit of muck and dirt into some of these corners. So this is pastel chalks, and we can start with just a little bit on the doors there. Give that a little grind in. There we go. We're going to do something else in a minute with pastel chalks as well, which will help, I think. So we can see we're just, it looks a little bit brighter on camera than it really is. But it just dumbs down the grey a little bit. Adds a little bit of texture, modulation to it. So modulation being a little bit of unevenness and graduation of colour change. Okay. So happy with that. Yeah, it looks considerably brighter on camera. Okay, right, so now I want to do something a little different. So I'm using a grey because I want to sort of create a sort of dusty, grimy, you know, you get that sort of accumulated dirt that you get in the corners and the edges. It never really gets cleaned out. And then we're adding some dark brown to that. And I'm hoping that that's going to give us another variation of colour. Look at that, that's darkened down nicely. So I'm going to give the whole thing a dust with that. I'm not doing it with any sort of precision, I'm just whacking over it a little bit. I want it to accumulate a bit in the corners. So that's going to dumb down that brown colour, or sort of almost rusty colour that we had. There we go. I'm happy with that. We can do it on the roof as well. Just in the middle there. Just gives it a bit of a faded look. And we'll do it on the doors. There we go. All of these things are supposed to be subtle and blend everything together. So I am happy with that. That'll do for me in terms of weathering. I think that looks suitably worn, used, and yeah, now we can get on with getting ready for painting the outside of it. My next job is just to open up this exhaust. I think what we're going to do is find my awl and centre punch it, which will make it a little easier for the drill not to slip. There we go. I didn't quite centre punch that. Let me just sort that out. That's better. Right, now we can drill that out. That's not happy. Right, I've popped the doors in place because we can use those for masking. I want to now glue the roof in place, so we're going to glue it in the centre here and glue it across here and across here, and that should keep it in place. And purposely keeping glue away from these doors, although this door is going to get glued into place. I've still got some weathering to do on the inside of that before we can install that permanently. So just gonna put a little bit of liquid glue on the joining areas. That's just gonna get the paint softening up, and then put some more on there. That should sit on top now. Gives you a longer time to get that the part placed. Okay, and we can pop that on using the front to align, and then this back bit kicks out a little bit. So that's the that's our roof on. I've put a little bit of glue in place, but now we can just go around and seal that in. It's a little bit too much there. Let's just get rid of that. There we go. I'll seal it on the other side. This bit is just slightly wanting to kick out, so we'll just hold that in place for a moment. There we go. Okay, so we'll get the back end to glue into place, and then we can just secure the front there. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so. It's free, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can hit my PayPal link in the text below. Every pound goes straight into the channel to keep the cameras rolling and to do more fun stuff for you to watch.